fun here.
You need a beer, Roger? What's he wearing under there?
And I just want to point out it is not clip-on like my friend Jack wears.
That's not true. I completely deny everything. Deny.
So I congratulate you for being here. I congratulate you because, as the President has said many times, his historic victory was your victory. It was the people's victory. It was a victory for the working middle class in this country, rather than the globalist elites that have driven this country into the gutter. I came to Atlanta yesterday to endorse Michael Williams, a Republican candidate for governor, who was an early supporter of Donald Trump, and who, like Donald Trump, came to politics not from politics, but he was an entrepreneur and a businessman until Obamacare virtually destroyed his business. And therefore he was, like Donald Trump, he had to get into politics to save his state and to fight for the kind of reforms that Georgia needs. So I am going to be endorsing candidates, and from what I can see in Alabama, they may be different than some of the candidates that the White House political office is endorsing, but I'll be endorsing candidates who stood up for Donald Trump and who will stand up for the Trump agenda. No rhinos, no Bush Republicans, no country club snots, no John McCain Quizlings. Donald Trump's nomination was the hostile takeover of the Republican Party, and we're not giving it back.
No way.
No way.
It's amazing to me that the president has successfully created 1 million new jobs.
Whoa.
We've had record days on the stock market. Remember they told us if Trump is elected, the stock market will crash.
How much money did Cuban lose?
They are hacking away at the underlying regulations that thwart business and opportunity in this country, and you're beginning to see this. Now, unfortunately, there are some in the Congress, some Republicans in the Congress,
Step on toes.
who are not behind the president's economic plan, specifically, and most importantly, the corporate tax cut that would cut our taxes below that of China, Japan, Mexico, and so on. This is the cornerstone of the Trump plan. Because were you to cut that tax rate to a more competitive level, the big United States companies that are doing business abroad would move back here to do business here, to expand here, to hire here. And they will call this the Trump boom. It will be the greatest peacetime expansion of jobs in this country. And my advice to the president is, he may have to run against the Democrats and the Republicans because he's put forward a plan to restore economic prosperity in this country, but the two-party duopoly that have run this country into the ground are not getting the memo. They're not getting the message.
They will. The people are with her.
I also tell you, in all honesty, that I have seen since the election a concerted effort, which never stopped, to delegitimize and to destabilize the Trump presidency. Think about it. First, it was, well, she won the popular vote. Well, if Bill and Hillary haven't been in enough campaigns to know that the popular vote does not elect the president, and they didn't calibrate their campaign for the electoral vote, that's their problem. Then they wanted a recount. That was pretty funny because I had written an article for The Hill in which I pointed out that these computerized voting machines are very simple to hack and manipulate.
That's right.
And when I wrote that, I was excoriated by the left. I was trashed by Media Matters for America. What an outrageous idea. Barack Obama told us nobody steals elections in America. But then when Hillary filed for a recount in Michigan and Wisconsin, and it came time to state her case, she had only one thing. These voting machines are easily manipulated and hacked. Then there was the argument that the Electoral College should have a briefing about the Trump campaign's non-existent ties to the Russians before they cast their ballots. Folks, we call this the Russian collusion delusion. The idea that Donald Trump had any assistance from the Russian state to win this election is a fairy tale.
That's right.
It's a fraud.
That's right.
It's a canard. It's an excuse for someone who spent $2 billion, who had the old media with her, the new media with her, and still got her ass kicked. So, to be clear, there is still, despite 2 congressional investigations, despite the witch hunt being conducted by Robert Mueller, there is still not an iota, not a scintilla of proof that the Russians either hacked the DNC, so their premise is false. In fact, the evidence is to the contrary, but there is no evidence that the Trump campaign or Donald Trump or members of his family or longtime associates of Donald Trump were involved with the Russian state to interfere and tip this election. It's a fraud. However, there are parallels between today and 1974 and Watergate. Many Americans don't know this because it got very little coverage in the mainstream media, but the super secret FISA court handed down documents in November that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Obama NSA, Clapper, Rogers, Brennan, Rice, Jarrett presumably, unconstitutionally and illegally surveilled over 30,000 Americans for political purposes. This is political espionage, and somebody has to go to jail for it. Let me stress, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is not Roger Stone saying this, or Alex Jones, or Michael Williams, or anyone else. This is a document handed down the court. This is their finding. It is undisputable that they used the surveillance apparatus of the deep state for political espionage. This makes Watergate look like a milk-fed puppy.
That's right.
It makes it look like a second-rate burglary. Yet you don't see you'll see nothing about this in the New York Times.
Nothing.
My question is an obvious one. It's a painful one. What is Jeff Sessions doing? Is he sleeping? Why has he not indicted the key officials in Obama's NSA? And then the question is, and we must ask it, what did the president know and when did he know it? What did Obama know and when did he know it?
That's right.
Because no person is above the law.
That's right.
Familiar to you? And then, of course, there's Bill and Hillary Clinton. Absolutely. So, to be absolutely clear, the Clinton Foundation was not a charity. It was a slush fund for grifters.
That's right.
It was a vehicle for the facilitation of multi-million-dollar bribes. where they were selling public policy decisions for essentially lining their own pockets. Yes, the Clinton Foundation paid for Chelsea Clinton's $6 million wedding.
Unbelievable.
Do they take it? Is that reflected on their taxes as income? Because I think it should be. This is the greatest scam in American history.
That's
they have violated not only IRS regulations but federal and state law. Yet Jeff Sessions, well, he seems to be catnapping in his office. There's no grand jury asking about Obama and the mass surveillance of Americans in violation of the Constitution. There is no grand jury looking into what Bill and Hillary and the Podesta brothers were doing at the Clinton Foundation. Some of you may be familiar with Stone's rules. Here's rule number 1. You don't win on defense. It's time to take this fight to the left. They are the lawbreakers. They are the ones who violated the Constitution. They are the ones who cheated in the election. You know what concerns me? The collusion of the Ukraine. That's what concerns me. This is, unlike the phony Russian nonsense, this is a real scandal in which we have real evidence, and we know that the Clintons cheated. They cheated repeatedly.
Yeah, they did.
And we still beat her ass. Now, some of you may remember, on election night, when Donald Trump said, "We may have won this election, but the fight has just begun." Little did we know how prophetic that would be, because the same deep state characters, the same intelligence agencies, all 17 of them, who were leaking and trying to hurt the president during the election, who have leaked continuously in violation of the law during his presidency. When the President of the United States cannot have a private conversation with the leader of another country without reading it in the New York Times, there's something rotten in Denmark. There's something wrong with our intelligence agencies. It is time to clean house. But when you clean house, the president needs to be very careful that he appoints men and women who didn't serve in the Bush administration, who aren't country club Republicans who may or may not have come to the fold late after Donald Trump won the nomination. He needs to appoint men and women who are, like him, outsiders, men and women who support the reform agenda. We've had it with the establishment Republicans, folks. They're not delivering. They raise millions of dollars on our issues, health care and gun control and all of the hot button issues. But when they get to Washington, they get a malady known as Potomac fever. And they become part of the political establishment that has, again, virtually destroyed this country.
Drain the swamp!
So,
We tell it, Roger. We love you, Roger Stone!
thank you. So, in conclusion, let me say that I think this is a very dangerous time for the president. There are people in the other party who plan to remove him from office. There are people in our party who plan to remove him from office. They intend to try to do, through a phony legal procedure and the courts, what they could not do at the ballot box last year. It is an illegitimate effort to try to undermine, destabilize, and remove Donald Trump. And right now, this manifests itself in an effort to isolate him. Does the president know that Mr. McMaster defended Susan Rice and said that her engaging in political surveillance was perfectly all right? Political espionage, I should say. Does the president know that that General McMaster extended her national security clearance? Does the president know that the UN ambassador was willfully misusing and unmasking the identities of Republicans who were being illegally surveilled by the Obama administration? Does the president know that Luther Strange is Mitch McConnell's candidate for the Senate in Alabama, and that's a good reason why he ought to get beat?
Yeah.
time for this president to take some scalps, folks. Time to remind the mainstream Republicans, the established Republicans, that Donald Trump's strength among Republican voters is actually stronger than it was on election day. Here's what I know. Donald Trump is a decent man. He is a good man. He is a just man. He is a man with little patience for conventional, politically correct politics. Donald Trump believes in results.
That's right.
He would rather have 2/3 of a loaf than none of the loaf. He is a man who understands the art of negotiation like no president we have ever had. But, that said, I know from 40 years of experience, when Donald Trump has all the information, he almost invariably makes the right decision. It is only when he's given partial information or he's not given information at all that mistakes have been made in this administration, and we have gotten high-level appointees who are charter members of the swamp rather than committed to draining it. So, folks, here's the bottom line. Put your faith in Donald Trump.
Amen.
Pray for the safety of our president. Pray for the safety of his family. Pray that he has the divine wisdom to take on the neocon quislings and the rats and the Judases around him who will seek to stab him in the back. And I'm not naming any names. McMaster. I am not going to cast any aspersions, Dina Powell. I am not going to question those who believe that isolating the president is the best way to protect him.
That's right.
The first time Donald Trump learns a piece of information that he should have known but nobody told him, somebody's going to be in very big trouble. He's his own man. There is no Karl Rove in Trump world. He is the architect of his victory. He, not Steve Bannon, is his chief strategist. Let's be very clear. The immigration issue, the trade issue, the NATO issue, cutting the corporate income tax, revitalizing our veterans administrations. These didn't come from a poll. They didn't come from a focus group. They didn't come from some hotshot political advisor. They came from Donald J. Trump. So, I want to tell you, if you don't know, I'm going to be starting a show on InfoWars that will be on for an hour a day. I believe it will be 3 o'clock Eastern, although that's subject to some elasticity. And it has been a great honor to work with Alex and the folks there who are, with us in spirit here tonight. I told Alex that I was speaking, and he asked me to extend to you his warm greetings and the fact that he is in solidarity with us today as we take on the deep state quislings who are attempting to take down our president. Let me also say that if you haven't bought a copy of The Making of the President 2016, it is, I think, a very good book on the presidential election to try to explain how Donald Trump pulled off the greatest upset in American history. And it didn't hurt that he was running against Hillary Clinton. And then for those of you who have not seen the Netflix documentary, Get Me Roger Stone, it is quite simply the greatest political documentary of all time. So because it is hot and it is crowded, and I know many of you are excited, I want to thank you for having me today. I want to remind you to keep the faith, put your faith in Donald Trump. And I finish by saying, if I may quote Colonel Travis at the Alamo, victory or death. Thank you.